Hello and welcome back to the Voices of Strength Summit. We're on session 2, and I hope you are going to enjoy this session as much as the last one with the wonderful Dennis Pitoko. But now we're moving on to another voice of strength, and let me just tell you a little bit about this gentleman. I'm going to begin with a quote that's in the Voices of Strength book. Strength does not come from the physical capacity. It comes from indomitable will. Now, these might not be the exact words of Colin because they're the words of Mahatma Gandhi, but I know Colin believes in this. Absolutely. Knowing who Colin is, knowing his story, and knowing what he's all about. And I found out so much about him when we worked together on his book, Mastering the Wolf. So let me just tell you a wee bit more about who Colin is. And of course, my page has disappeared and it's back here. Okay, not that I need to say that. So Colin is a former soldier and police officer. And as a young man, he trained in the Army Apprentice for 2 years before being deployed in the UK and overseas, including a tour of Northern Ireland and in the late 70s, sorry. But after the army, he subsequently joined the police and had, is it a 40-year service?
No, not 40. No, I'm not that old. What he's trying to do to me. Nigh on 30, yeah.
Yeah, about a 30, there we go. I'm doing it again. I've upset him already. And now he runs Intellect Group and works in cybersecurity and all sorts of wonderful things. But today we're going to talk about I don't sell cupcakes. Whoa, I'm interested to know because I like a cupcake. So tell me why you don't sell cupcakes. So let's turn over to Colin and let's listen to what he's got to say. So I'm just going to remove my spotlight and put him in the spotlight. So here we go. Colin Tansley.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Good morning, everybody. And can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. Much appreciated. We've known each other quite some time. Well, a couple of years, and it's flown by.
I know.
It's been an enlightening experience. So to answer your question, I don't sell cupcakes. Well, I'll cover that in the presentation, but you know me, I don't like doing normal stuff. I go a bit off the wall sometimes. And I looked in, you probably were a bit confused. I looked in my chapter for Voice of the Strength, and it doesn't mention cupcakes, does it?
No.
So there's nothing like going off piece and confusing everybody, because I think it says a recovering cynic, which I mentioned as well. Okay, so just a bit about me then, if I can get this. I've had technology problems this morning. Okay, so as Brenda said, former soldier and police officer, and I'll talk about that shortly. Husband, father, and grandfather, proud in all of those areas. Barmy dog owner, the dog, not me. So we've got a Labrador. We've had Labradors since I've known Jill, and they're just a part of the family now. So I do run Intellect Group, which I will touch on as well, what we do and why we do it. I am an author now. 3, or certainly played a part in 3 books, and a recovering cynic. You can't do the jobs I've done over 30 plus years and not have a cynical nature about you. But I suppose what I've learned is that can be a little bit destructive at a personal level, and there's a bit about you've got to being cynical, right place, right time, really. That sort of, I think, comes as anybody who's been certainly in the police service, because of the nature of the stuff you deal with. You do adopt a sort of stereotypical, or you can, not everybody does it, but you can adopt that sort of stereotypical fronts that we deal with things and people. And sometimes it's a bit of a, I think I mentioned in the book about being the blue light force field we used to talk about, that you think you're indestructible. Cupcakes then. Okay. So chiefly what I do is I try and prevent, probably the best way to describe this, if you think about all the companies that are getting fined for data breaches, or they're getting their cybersecurity isn't up to scratch and people hack them, or they're not doing the due diligence properly and they get fined, what we try and do is prevent that by offering solutions beforehand. And the reason I sort of talk about this as being cupcakes is it'd be dead easy to go and sell cupcakes, you know, sweet, creamy and tasty, and you could have a shop. People will buy cupcakes. And we've all done it. I enjoy sweet, I enjoy cakes, I enjoy sweets, I've got a sweet tooth. But it's very difficult to persuade people to buy risk solutions. And Judith, who I know is on the call, well, I think will sort of understand this, that you can talk all day long and say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you want to avoid it. But what happens predominantly is people come to me after the event, unless they're regulatory obliged to do certain things. For example, I did some anti-money laundering training last week. And the other thing is, I think in the book, one of my quotes is, the best views come over after the hardest climbs. I don't like doing things that are easy. I like a challenge. So I could go and open a shop or a van and sell coffee and cupcakes if I wanted to. But I prefer doing what I'm doing, even though it's frustrating and annoying. But it's also rewarding when you're able to offer that sort of protection and security particularly to companies that are not overly aware from it. So does cupcakes make sense now, Brenda? Okay.
I'll unmute. Yes, it does. Yeah. I muted myself there. Yes, it does make sense now. I love it.
Yeah. So the best views come from hardest climbs. I think we can factor that into all areas of our life, really, that good things don't come easy, do they? And I always enjoyed as a kid going walking and mountain climbing, hill walking and services, and continued that. And you know, yourself, you're walking up. I think you did Snowdon recently, didn't you? Yeah. You know how tough that is when you're walking up there. I've done that a couple of times now.
Yeah, especially if you do the pig track and you've not done any preparation.
Yeah, it's hard work, but once you get up there, the views are fantastic, aren't they? And that I think that speaks to me, that particular quote. And there's a chapter in that book along with 16 other guys. But I suppose first it's how I got there, really, how I got to Mastering the Wolf, which is my first book. I always wanted to write a book since being a kid. Read a lot as a child. My mum and my father actually were avid book readers, and I was always getting presents of books at Christmas, and I used to sort of, or my birthday, and I've still got some here now with, you know, my mum's sort of written in them. So it's always in the back of my mind, do something, but I never anticipated doing something like this, because this was really a legacy I think I wanted to leave for my kids and grandkids. Because you don't always have the time to sit down, or perhaps there's not the motivation to sit down with your kids or your grandkids and actually talk about your life, how you got to. You might sort of touch on bits and pieces, but this was a sort of quite honest, open, transparent about, you know, I'm going to try and avoid not to swear, but the mess ups you make up in your life. I actually heard the other day, and this is going off track again, that people who are high performers swear more. So I've now got an excuse to swear as much as I like. So that was it, really. It was going to be a legacy. And then I got to, well, what I'll do is I'll self-publish, and I will self-publish this anonymously in a pseudonym. And then somehow we were introduced, and we had lots of conversations, and it was still going to be, it was going to be in a pseudonym. And we had many conversations on this, and it was a sort of firm pushback from me. And then somehow you managed to persuade me it was a good thing to do. I woke up one morning and thought, oh, do you know what, sod it, let's just go for it and see what happens. So and I've got a little slide here that I hadn't noticed until the other day that you put this in the book, in Voices of Strength. My first conversation with Colin made me feel like I had a challenge. So I think you saw right through that. There was a lot of pushback in it, probably quite difficult to deal with, I think. But yeah, you managed to talk me around, and I'm glad you did, because I don't think it would be the book it is without that. Could have been from anybody, and I think part of that was about, there's no honesty in it if you're not prepared to put your name to it. So, and that was my thinking. I thought I'd just talk about, without, obviously I'm not going to talk about the book too much, but I suppose the journey that led me to that, I suppose that, and I'm going to do it pictorially because I work in that way. That is me, believe it or not. I've got some hair there. That's me as a young lad, born in London, Cockney by birth. Grew up in the 60s. I think both my mother, but particularly my father, quite of the day, that boys are boys, men are men, children are seen and not heard, all that sort of stuff, which some of you may have heard yourselves. But one of the big things is, if you fall over, you don't cry. If somebody hits you, you hit them back. You don't stand for none of this. So you had to be a man from a very young age, and that's what's expected of you. But then my father left home. My mother and father divorced, and we had quite a period of time where he was around, but he wasn't around. We saw him regularly, and he was still a part of our life, but he wasn't a day-to-day thing. So Mum was a big part of our lives then, for me and my brother and sister, and I was the oldest. So I think I adopted a bit of I became dad, if you like, and looked after them a lot. Then my stepfather came into our life. We didn't get on, and I think part of that's because I was the man, really, or I thought I was. And we get on famously now, but one of the things, that there was a rub all the time there, because I was pushing back against him, and I decided, for all sorts of reasons, that I was going to join the Royal Marines. Well, that didn't happen, and that's covered in the book, but I was sort of persuaded to join the forces. So I joined the army at 16, and that was me. Fresh-faced, naive, pig-headed, thought he knew it all, but I came down to earth with a bump. Because one of the things they do to you in the forces, if you've experienced that yourself, or anybody, is they pretty much undo you and build you back up again. And that was probably, looking back, was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my life, was not so much leaving home, but joining the services, because the self-discipline, the resilience, it all became part of me, I think. And I think any serviceman or servicewoman would say that. It gives you qualities that you just can't get in civvy street, I don't think. And 2 years as an Army Apprentice, I went from that fresh-faced kid without the haircut. I've just noticed that, because that didn't last very long. That must have been on a very sort of the first day or so. I graduated at 18 in Harrogate as a full-blown soldier, and then experienced sort of 5 years, a further 3 years as a regular soldier. As you mentioned, went to Northern Ireland, but did quite a bit of traveling and met lots of people, interesting people. And I think you grow when you travel to other countries. I think it gives you depth, I think. So enjoyed it, but became a little bit frustrated, if I'm honest, because when you're not in deployment, you're not doing very much. And I like to be doing stuff. And we found ourselves, particularly in the last year, painting wagons and sort of sweeping parade squares and stuff like that, which wasn't really what I joined for. I would join. The reason I wanted to join the Marines was because I wanted to climb, I wanted to ski, and I did get quite a bit of that, actually. But again, that's covered in the book. So from a young kid, I'd always harboured a desire to join the police as well. So at the age of 20, I joined West Yorkshire Police, and this is me. One of the old guys, well, one of the old sweats who got in touch with me recently said, "I always remember you as being happy and smiling," because some of what you do in the army, you bring into your personal life. You're always playing jokes against each other. You're always sort of do banter and all that sort of stuff. And that was a good example of that. We've been on PSU, I think, some police support unit duties, and we were just messing about in one of the bars waiting for a job to come in. And then sort of that began a journey, really. I was lucky enough to do all sorts of stuff in the police, like the army. It sets you up. It also gives you lots of skills. You're dealing with people. You can do all sorts of courses. The work is hard. The work can be difficult, but there's plenty of opportunities. But I did struggle to get promoted. And in 1993, I did. That's me as on the sergeant's course. I joined the police in 81. I got promoted in 1993. It took me quite a bit of time to get promoted. Initially, I wasn't interested. I didn't feel that I was ready to lead anybody. But then I got the bug, and that became part of my psyche, really, that I wanted to just do better all the time. I went on lots of courses. I did a degree because I felt I didn't do particularly well at school, which is true. I tried to sort of pack in as much as I possibly could, all about advancement, and probably to the detriment of my family to a certain extent. I think you're just trying to do well for them, but in other ways, I wasn't there. Yeah, lots of stuff happened in the police, and that's detailed in the book. I'm not going to go into too much detail in here, but I'm going to put on two photographs at the same time now, the two last ones. I volunteered to go to Iraq because, and that was back in 2006, I think, 2006-07. I did about 8 months over there. Something I wanted to do because I felt I could make a contribution. It spoke to my former service life, but there was another reason as well. And this photograph really sort of says it all. This was about the same sort of time. So career-wise, I was doing great, but in my personal life, I wasn't happy. I'd left my first wife. I got remarried, but in my sort of personal life, it was an absolute disaster. It was horrible. And there was lots of stuff going on, which is detailed in the book, which led me at a point in my life to go in to get some counselling, which again was a really good decision. And again, that's detailed in the book. But if anybody's ever done that, what happens is you actually wind right back to where it all started. And there was a bit about my upbringing, and it was good as far as I'm concerned, I'm not being critical of any of that, but there were different times, and that sort of led to my sort of I suppose, I don't know, it's difficult to sort of self-critique here, but I think the biggest part of me was around policing, and where I got those values sort of became quite entrenched. So 80s and 90s policing, I don't know if you remember the TV series Life on Mars. That is so accurate, that program. So they must have had a very good police advisor on it. So just to sum it up for me, 80s and 90s policing, bear in mind I joined in 81 and I finally retired in 2008. So for sort of 20, things began to change very slightly, I suppose, in the early noughties. It was a case of work hard, drink hard. There was a distinct culture. It was very male dominated. And if you didn't buy into that culture, then you very easily be ostracized. I always wanted to go into CID. That was a big part. I pursued that. And certainly in our CID officers, there were no females. There was lots of banter, if you want to call it that. Some stuff that isn't in the book and it's not, but stuff that you're not really happy about what's being said or done. But are you sort of brave enough to take it on? And I knew people that did that, and you pretty much say their career was finished. But the one thing I would say here is it's very easy to criticize cops for that. it's very easy to criticise the bosses for that. But police officers are reflective of society. And that was a societal issue as well. It wasn't just about policemen being policemen. But that becomes part of your culture. I relate in the book that, we could not, as police officers, we couldn't lose. Our army was always bigger. And, if there was public disorder, then it was dealt with robustly, shall we say. There wasn't any social media, there wasn't any cameras. And, the rights and wrongs of that, again, you could debate that for God knows how long. But then it does give you that sort of distinctly sort of macho approach to policing, which does work in certain and is needed in certain circumstances. But all of that, I was never a massive drinker, but if you wanted to be on the CID, you had to drink and you had to be part of the club and you had to turn up at a certain time on a Tuesday, and everybody did it. And it might have been frowned upon, but nobody did anything about it. But I don't know if that's the case now. But like the CID course, for example, was 10 weeks. And at 9 o'clock, the message from the instructor would be you study until 9 p.m. after class, and then you go out. And you go out with your mates, because we're all a team here. And there was very much a sort of team approach to it. But that maybe you get a sort of flavour of what policing's about. But the job got done. And that is a comment about and I think perhaps a crafty comment in the copy, that Master and Wolf is a very personal story of my life in public service, and I think it resonates with many, particularly those who've served about that sort of time. It was, your typical it's probably best described by way of a story, actually. That I remember going into moving to another shift, and at that particular time there were many more females coming into into policing, and what you were seeing was breakdown of marriages right across the board. And I was the only one on this shift of about 10 people that wasn't separated or hadn't been divorced. And it was this sort of, that is another aspect of sort of policing, that the impact has on your sort of personal life, and if you're not very, very careful. So you can see that sort of with that story itself, it drifts into the sort of personal stuff and how it can affect your approach at home. Basically, it's very difficult. Not, they say you should leave work at work. Well, you can't. It doesn't work like that unless you're very lucky. So I tried to make it as personal, as honest as I possibly could. And I got a piece of feedback recently for an old friend of mine, which I think I'll put up, and I'll let you read it, because it pretty much sums up where I wanted to go. And I think it suggests to me I got the tone about right. That's from a friend called Andy Brown. He was a DS in child protection at the same time as I was, roundabout. And I always said that was the most difficult but the most rewarding time of my career, because you dealt with all sorts of horrible stuff, but you knew you were doing the right thing. So I think I began to move away into sort of more softer policing deliberately. And that presented its own challenge, which again is detailed in the book. So what have I learnt, and what led me? And I'm still on a journey, I think. Look after number one. Sounds very selfish, but unless you look at this was actually said to me in police training. I was walking back to the classroom, and this old sweat stopped me, an old detective, says, "How long have you been here, lad?" I said, "Oh, I've only been here a week." He said, "Bit of advice for you." He said, "Look after number one." Now, you could interpret that in all sorts of different ways, but my interpretation of it is that unless you're looking after yourself, then there's no way you can take care of anybody else. You can't please everyone, and neither should you try. I think I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. I try not to do that now. Yeah. I would never have done this 2 years ago. I would never have sat in front of a screen and talked to people about me, because that wasn't a done thing to do. So, yeah, it's okay to be vulnerable. I don't think, I think you pick your time. I think you pick your place and who you want to be vulnerable with. But it's something, particularly as blokes, particularly as blokes as old as me now, I should be encouraging other guys to do it, and I certainly do it in my sons and my grandsons. Yeah, I lived with toxicity for far too long in my second relationship in particular, and that had an impact on me and an impact on her. I think I say in the book that had I not left, and part of the reason that I left was the counselling may help me reach a decision, then one of us would have ended up dead. I think it was that bad. It was really bad. Even thinking about it now makes me upset. Work to live, don't live to work. Yeah, we all. I was actually wedded to work for quite some time because I wanted to do the very best. And Jill would probably say, to a certain extent, I still am, but I'm much more disciplined about it now. I enjoy my work, but I realise it's not everything. Don't miss an opportunity to tell those close to you love them. Something I don't, and I think I recall of it, I'm sure my mother told me. I'm going to move on that one, but I think the message says it all. It is okay to be vulnerable, but I think that I lost a friend recently, and I'm not going to do it now, but it's okay for boys and men to cry. It's fine, and I think that's about understanding emotions. That the way the counsellor pitched it to me was, look, crying is just like laughing. It's an emotion. It's just an expression. So, let it come out. And I don't think I'm ever happy with it, but I'm much more open about that now, and I will. And again, I think it's about encouraging. If you bottle it up, it's going to come out in a way that you probably don't want it to come out. So, tips for my younger self, and again, this is covered in Voices of Strength. Life really is one big classroom. So, learn to listen to learn. Have confidence in your own ability and be yourself. And I think certainly there's aspects of me in the police, and certainly in other people I know in the job, trying to be something else. And sometimes you do have to do that. You have to be a bit of an actor, particularly when you're dealing with members of the public. So, be yourself. Don't be afraid of sort of stepping out into your shoes. And never view mistakes as failures, treat them as lessons. And I think that's my approach now. Whereas, if I've made a mistake, I'd be beating myself up. Nowadays, yeah, I've learned from that. Move on, because that can eat away if you're not careful. So my next little venture, as Brenda knows, and is supporting me on this one, is the Little Book of Wolfie Wisdom. So these are little nuggets of advice, one of which I mentioned about look after number one is number one in there. So there's one for every day. It's these, particularly I think in both the forces and in the police, people got these one-liners they'll come out with at various points. And some of them, they are gold. Some are quite funny. So I've got loads of them going around my head, and I thought, what better than just to put them into a little book? So I put the quote in there, and I've also put what it actually means to me as an individual. I say the 31-ish, I think, in that particular book. So that's due out on the 17th of October. And it's really sort of, I suppose, Martian Wolf is about me. And I suppose Wolfie Wisdom is about what I've learned and how I may help you. It's probably the best way to couch it, I think. And this is what I do now. I still think I'm adding value. I like to think I'm helping people, companies stay safe, secure, protected, all that sort of stuff, which is pretty much what I've been doing for the past 40 years. No, I hope that's been helpful, as insightful as I can make it. And if you want to know more, you'll have to go buy the book. All right. I think you muted, Brenda.
If we were in a room, we'd be standing on our feet. I'm quite emotional, you know. We've really, through the whole process, and I think Andrea will know that, and I know Professor Jagdish very well as well, that when you work with someone on story and their life, as a publisher, as a coach, as a whatever you want to call me, a jack of all trades, I think, that you really get to know someone at a core. And, you know, when I came up with the idea for Voices of Strength, on the front of the book it says, when the norm no longer satisfies the hunger of men. And I chose men deliberately because working with someone like yourself, George, opened my eyes to that men are enough of the status quo. And that's what this book's all about. It's about going, no, it's exactly all those points you made about being vulnerable. And that's what all the stories in this book is. It's the vulnerability of men who are forging a path that's different from the norm, who are like sticking their two fingers up, so to speak, and going, no, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to live my life, and this is what I'm going to do. And you can't do it without vulnerability. And from that, you get the strength. And then you find the courage to open your voice. Because actually, in Master and the Wolf, it's behind me on my shelf there. You are so open and so honest. And that's what I love about you so much. You are open and honest. You're a man of integrity. And that's how we go on so much. And I do love the wee story that you thought I was ignoring you at the beginning, and I thought, oh, that's it. But actually, my emails have gone into your junk.
Yeah. But that's sort of reflective of me to a point, I think. And I think I'm a bit more tolerant now. But you know, you just get used to things being done in a certain way at a certain time. And if you look back at the way sort of army discipline is instilled in you, then there's no wonder, really, is it?
No, exactly. And the policing and things, of course. Of course. And the other bit about the book, it says rise and roar with a new message. Well, we can see here, you know, I don't sell cupcakes. Colin's definitely got a new message, and it's fueled with personal power, because in his journey of working from the inside out, he realised he had a power within him that was way beyond what he learned maybe through the army and the police. And when you do that, about that vulnerability, putting yourself first, getting rid of toxicity, all the things that you've done, that's when you really rise. And I'm just so privileged. I'm not just your publisher, we're friends. And this is what happens when you really get to know people deep down and are like-minded. But I think there might be a question or two. We've got a few minutes left. Judith, did you have your hand up?
I think Judith's muted. I think everybody's muted, Brenda.
Professor Jagdish, on you go.
Thank you very much, Colin sir, for a wonderful presentation. It's really wonderful. And I especially liked your last 2 slides of the learnings and the tips that you have given. They are applicable to each and every individual in any career that you are there. wonderful learnings, and I totally agree with each one of that. And another thing is that, as you explained, the cops, the policemen are also human beings like
Yeah.
us, and they have to be treated with due dignity and respect. And
Yeah.
they are a reflection of the society that we are living into. So you had a wonderful journey of life, and uh, really, I look forward to more learnings from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Jagdish. Andrea, do you have anything to say?
Just thank you, Colin, for an insight on your journey, and it so resonates with me because I come from a law enforcement background myself, done 27 years with them.
Yeah.
And the culture, the background is typical of what you said.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I think you're right. It's I think, yeah, it's difficult to say that have things changed. I don't know, so I don't interface with cops very much anymore. But I think it is absolutely, people forget that cops are reflective of society. And yeah, there is a culture, absolutely, but every organisation has a culture. But I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for when things go wrong, because when things go wrong, that's a lesson we've got to learn. But no, I bet you've seen some changes as well yourself.
Yes.
Hopefully for the good one. Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Andrew.
thanks very much, Andrea. So, Colin, there we have it.
Did you say Judith had a question, Brenda? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm asking Judith, but I don't know where she's gone.
Right,
she might be away making a cup of tea, who
Okay.
knows?
Yeah, all right.
She doesn't seem to be responding. I've messaged her and whatever. She was clapping you. Oh, that's what she was doing. She was using, I think we've got reactions and we can do things like this.
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
You know? Yeah, there she is. There she's doing it. Maybe she's at work listening in.
Yeah.
Don't know. Anyway, probably that's maybe why she's not saying, because usually Judith's got a lot to say, as you know. But anyway, I'm sure she can put something in the chat if she wants to. Yeah. So, Colin, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to those who are watching and those who are still to watch. This recording is going to be going on and on. We're going to create a podcast which will let you know all about that as well in the near future. And thank you, Colin, for supporting the work that we do by sharing your story, by being courageous and brave to share it and being vulnerable. All the things that make Colin, and why we should all be listening to what you've got to say, because you've mastered your wolf. It's time for other people to master their wolf. So everybody, there you have it, the end of session 2. We've got another session coming up at 12 o'clock. Let's just remind myself, I'm so excited today. I've forgotten who's next. So let me just quickly remind us who's coming on at 12 o'clock. Oh, we've got Professor Jagdish next. What can I say? What can I say? So he'll be coming back in about 15 minutes or so, and we will be enlightened by this wonderful human being that I call my friend too. So until next time, everyone, this is Brenda saying, be brilliant. Much love. Until next time.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
And remember, find your voice of strength. Bye.
Bye.